All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about legacy, loyalty, and some seriously lethal politics. This is a story about one of the most intense, high-stakes handovers of power you'll ever hear about.
So, picture this. We're at the deathbed of King David, one of the most legendary rulers in history. His kingdom, it's powerful, but it's also on a knife's edge. His death could just plunge the whole thing into chaos. So everything, and I mean everything, rests on the final instructions he's about to give his son, Solomon. And let me tell you, these are not your typical tearful goodbyes. Nope. This is a cold, calculated blueprint for survival.
And here's where it gets really interesting. David's final words aren't just one single speech. It's actually split into two very different parts. You've got the public version, right? The one for the history books that everyone's supposed to hear. And then there's the secret, private agenda, just for Solomon. One is all about being a good, pious king. The other, it's all about payback.
Okay, so first up, let's look at the public will. This is the part David says out loud for everyone to hear, and it's exactly the kind of noble, kingly advice you'd expect. He tells Solomon, be strong, act like a man, follow God's laws. It's beautiful, really. Sounds like the perfect, righteous foundation for a new reign, or so it seems.
But then, once the doors are closed, the mask completely drops. And it's a shocking shift. After all that pious talk, David lays out a secret hit list. His last will and testament literally becomes a blueprint for a political purge. Just look at the language here. It goes from walk in obedience to bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. It's night and day.
So who's on this list? Two men are specifically marked for death. First, you have Joab, David's own general, incredibly powerful, but also a huge problem. Then there's this guy Shimei, a man who dared to curse David at his absolute lowest moment. Now, here's the catch. David had sworn an oath that he wouldn't kill Shimei himself, but the instructions he gives Solomon, well, they create a very clear and very brutal loophole.
So, David dies. Solomon is now king, and he's got this violent inheritance from his father. But he doesn't just blindly follow orders, no. He executes this plan with ruthless efficiency. He takes his father's personal vendetta and turns it into a masterclass in political consolidation. See, this isn't just about revenge. This is pure strategy.
And Solomon approaches this like a checklist, but he adds his own items to the top. He doesn't just go after the names his father gave him. He's smart. He knows that before he can even think about settling his father's old scores, he has to lock down his own power first. It's a very calculated sequence of moves, starting with the person who's the biggest threat to him.
And wouldn't you know it, the first challenge comes from inside his own family. His older brother Adonijah, who, by the way, had already tried to grab the throne, makes this seemingly innocent request. He wants to marry Abishag, who was a consort to their father, David. Now to us, that might not sound like a big deal, but back then, oh, that was a huge power move. Marrying the former king's consort was basically a way of saying, hey, I should be the king. It was a direct challenge.
Solomon sees right through it. He knows exactly what Adonijah is doing. This is a power play, plain and simple. And he doesn't hesitate for a second. There's no committee meeting, no long deliberation. His response is immediate and it is absolute. He gets it. Any sign of weakness here, and his reign is over before it's even begun.
And bam! Just like that, Solomon gives the order. Adonijah is executed. The biggest, most immediate threat to his rule is gone. That sends a crystal clear message to anyone else with ambitions. The throne is not up for grabs. So threat number one is neutralized. And remember, this was a threat that wasn't even on his father's original list. This was all Solomon.
Okay, so the news of Adonijah's execution spreads like wildfire, and it sets off a chain reaction. The first domino on David's original list is about to fall. That's Joab, the general. He knows he's in deep trouble because he had sided with Adonijah, so he makes a desperate run for it, seeking sanctuary in the holy tent, literally grabbing onto the horns of the altar. In that culture, this was supposed to be a safe zone where no blood could be shed. It was his last desperate gamble.
Solomon sends a message, come out. But Joab refuses. He says, no, I will die here. He's basically creating this incredibly tense standoff. He's daring Solomon to commit sacrilege, to violate a sacred space, banking on the idea that Solomon won't cross that line.
Does Solomon back down? Not a chance. He doesn't even blink. He gives the order to execute Joab right there at the altar. And this is brilliant politically. Solomon frames it not as a holy space being violated, but as justice finally being served, cleansing his family's name from the innocent blood that Joab himself has shed in the past. And with that, the second name on David's list is officially crossed off.
All right, that brings us to the final target, Shimei. And for this one, Solomon's strategy completely changes. He puts away the sword and picks up his wits. The brute force approach won't work here because of his father's oath. So Solomon has to be way smarter. He needs to set a trap, a perfect, inescapable trap.
So here's what he does. He summons Shimei and basically puts him under citywide house arrest. He makes him swear a sacred oath that he will never, ever leave Jerusalem. And then Solomon just waits. Think about that patience. For 3 full years, nothing happens. Shimei probably thought he was safe. And then he makes one tiny, fatal mistake. He leaves the city to go get a couple of runaway slaves, a seemingly minor errand. And in that moment, he springs the trap.
The second Shimei gets back, Solomon calls him in. And the confrontation is just brilliant. Solomon isn't executing him for that old curse against his father David. No, he's executing him for breaking a sacred oath sworn to him, the new king. It's a completely legal, airtight pretext. Shimei has absolutely no defense. He's caught.
And that's it. The final order is given, and the man who cursed David is struck down. This move just perfectly illustrates Solomon's method. Clever, patient, and absolutely lethal. The last loose end is tied up. The final enemy from his father's generation is gone. David's bloody checklist is finally complete.
So let's recap. Every rival is gone, his own and his father's. David's secret, final wishes have been fulfilled to the letter. At this point, Solomon's position on the throne is totally unchallengeable. He has proven to everyone that he's not only wise, but also absolutely ruthless when he needs to be.
And the result? The kingdom was established in his hands. It's such a simple sentence, but it holds so much weight. This legendary reign, famous for its peace and prosperity, was built on a foundation of bodies. It was forged through a combination of public piety and secret strategic violence. The threat of civil war was gone, but man, the price was high.
And all of this really leaves us with a huge, timeless question about power, doesn't it? We remember Solomon for his incredible wisdom, but his reign began with this brutal, bloody calculus. So what does that tell you? To build a lasting legacy, is it wiser to be feared or to be just? Or maybe, just maybe, do you have to be both?